maybe Sam, you could introduce yourself for everyone watching today.
Yeah, hey, and thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Sam. I was a quantitative ETF trader at Jane Street before entering crypto. In 2017, I created Alameda Research, a crypto liquidity provider, which now trades about $1 billion a day globally. And then last year, I started up FTX, which is a crypto derivatives exchange. And then for the last 3 months or so, we've been working on Project Serum, which is a fully on-chain decentralized exchange and ecosystem, which is going to be rolling out over the next month or so.
All right, so there's lots of questions already in the chat to ask you. But before we start, I want to tell anyone watching that if you ask us a question on Twitter, on the YouTube stream, or if you go to our chat on coinmarketcap.com/chat, and then your question gets picked by the moderator, which is me, you stand a chance to win $10 worth of FTT, and there will only be 10 winners. So start asking. I'll start with a question that was seeded from earlier, which is, Sam, what are some of the issues in the DeFi space right now, and how will Serum change the current state of DeFi? Oh, yeah, $20 worth of FTT. $20, 10 winners. Continue.
So I think probably the single biggest problem in DeFi right now is it's too slow. And there are a lot of ways of seeing that. If it takes $1 and 5 minutes to do a single thing, that's just too much. I mean, you can imagine trying to have an exchange where you don't learn about your orders for 5 minutes and it costs $1 to send an order, and you can't have liquidity providers. You can't send an order for less than $10,000. You can't send an order for more than $1 million, so you don't want it to take 5 minutes. And let's just think about exchanges sort of more globally. There's just a ton of things you can't do when things are that slow and expensive. And the core problem is Ethereum just doesn't have enough transactions per second. It just falls short. And so on the one hand, if you build on Ethereum, it can't support a lot of things. But on another hand, you build on another chain and you don't have sort of any of the network effect of Ethereum. And that's a real problem, that you build on a faster chain and you don't get all of the apps along with it. And so I think that sort of created this, this sort of problem for growing out the space where it's very hard to find a viable way to build a scaling application. And what's Serum doing about that? Well, it's building on a faster chain. So it's primarily being built on Salon, which has about 10,000 times the speed of Ethereum. And that's enough to make it, able to support real applications. And on the other side, how do you get a network if it doesn't start with any? Well, first of all, it's going to be building out a ton of cross-chain bridges so that you can access it from your favorite chain. And second of all, it involves a giant simultaneously build out on Solana of a ton of apps, from wallet software and explorers to token projects, to borrow lending facilities and listings, and a ton of other things, so that there is actually enough of an ecosystem around it to justify using it.
All right, so we have our first user question. This is from user 3956141. And just, if you guys want to, in your CMC accounts, you can change your name to something more exciting and less numerical. But we'll start this question. How will cross-chain trading work? Will it be with tokenized assets on Solana with Ethereum type tokens, for example, or will it use another approach?
Yeah, so there's going to be basically two versions of this. And the first is that you tokenize. So the first is that you create an SPL wrapper. SPL is the Salon token standard. To create an SPL wrapper on an Ethereum-based token and then trade that on Serum. And that's the fastest way. That's what's getting you the best experience. But there's another way too, which is using cross-chain bridges. You'll actually be able to interact with it from Ethereum. And so you can basically use variants on optimistic rollups to have the Serum ecosystem actually understand things on a bunch of different blockchains, allowing Solana and Ethereum to communicate with each other. So you will be able to actually just place an order from MetaMask. Now it's still going to be kind of slow. You're still going to, the first step of that is still going to be sending something on the Ethereum blockchain. So you're still going to have to pay for that, but it will give it sort of full interoperability.
All right, that makes sense. Someone actually had asked about MetaMask, so MetaMask. So you've answered that question. The next question is also from our chat. This is from Nietria, who asks, what is your strategy for building a strong community? And what are the best ways for the community to help you guys out with adoption?
Yeah, so, part of this is just about building a great product. Like, that's obviously an important part of building a strong community, but there are a lot of other things that go into it too. So one piece of this is just pushing on many, many fronts at once. And so in addition to the product rollout, we've had the Serum token rollout. And then we have a ton of projects building on Solana and on Serum. And so we've got a bunch of different companies who are working on developing applications on Solana. And we're also reaching out to a lot of projects about building their projects natively on Solana, about listing their tokens on Serum, and sort of a lot of other things to bring users over, and just to try and get sort of as much adoption as we can from as many fronts as possible. And basically putting all of these together to build sort of something out of nothing, to each get a portion of a new community and put that together and get enough that can start to grow. And the ways for, the community to help out, I mean, once Serum is live, I think start using it, and obviously give feedback on it. And when it's a product that you like, start telling your friends about it, and start trying to grow out the number of people who are using Serum. And if you know projects, start suggesting that they look into building on Serum and that they start integrating with it.
All right. I mean, tell your friends is kind of
yep,
is kind of the advice. Yeah, it makes sense. Here's a question from a YouTube user, Daniel Fazakis. Does Serum rely on stablecoins and wrapped Bitcoin being available on Solana?
So, it doesn't strictly speaking rely on it, although that's sort of very important to it, because if you can't trade, USD like instruments and you can't trade Bitcoin like instruments, that cuts out a lot of the volume. In crypto, and obviously you could imagine Serum just having, Solana versus SRM trades, but it's got to grow beyond that. And so part of this is just creating wrappers for existing products, but part of this is, relying on the current bridges, things from, Ren BTC to Thorchain, to Suma, to all the other, companies who are building out, these bridges to build them out to Solana as well. And then eventually, using optimistic rollups to actually have sort of fully on-chain, provable interaction between the project's native blockchains and Solana.
Interesting. All right, here's no one from YouTube. How does Serum plan to scale if Solana, which Serum runs on, becomes congested, expensive, impractical like Ethereum has? Kind of a loaded question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And the first thing that I'll say is, it has a lot more capacity. So right now, Solana has like 50,000 transactions per second of capacity. So you get this factor of like 10,000 to start out with, which means that, the Solana network could grow to be 10,000 times the size of the current Ethereum network before running into the same scaling issues. And that's just a lot. And that gives it a ton of headroom to grow. And that's super exciting. And so that's the first piece of the answer. But the second piece is, if it does get that, there are a lot of ways to scale Solana. So you can scale it just with like, more validators running, more software on larger servers. You can scale it with various optimizations to Solana, many of which have been done, but many of which have not been done. That can make it, still faster. And eventually, if you really do need to host like the entire, world's data on it, you're going to start to see things like sharding, things like, multiple Solana chains using rollups between each other to communicate. So there are a lot of things you can do at the extreme end to scale it out, although those all have costs, which are sort of the traditional costs, associated with sharding and things like that. But even before you get to that point, you can scale out Solana quite a bit.
Let's go to a question now that was seeded from earlier. Could you briefly explain the difference between Serum BTC and Serum USD?
Yeah, so these are sort of prototypes for tokenized products that you can build on Serum, and they're meant to be two of the harder ones. Easier ones are wrapping ERC20 tokens, because you can do, for instance, optimistic rollups between Ethereum and Solana, which which is sort of work. They're finicky, but they work. Serum, getting Bitcoin and US dollars on Salon are both a little bit trickier. And the reasons are basically the following. So for Bitcoin, the problem is that the Bitcoin blockchain doesn't have smart contracts. It can't do any computation really itself, or what it can do is quite limited. And so because of that, you basically can't have fully on-chain custodial things for Bitcoin. You can't have the equivalent of a smart contract holding a Bitcoin and waiting to release it until the wrapper is redeemed. And so basically what you have to rely on instead is just atomic swaps. You can do cross-chain atomic swaps with Bitcoin. And using those, you can have markets that settle to a Bitcoin, and then you can build tokenized products around that. It's a little bit tricky and it's not perfect. But that's sort of one solution. Then the other solution, which is what Ren BTC and WBTC and other things do, is to have things which are custodial and rely on basically humans with multi-sig wallets. And there are costs to that as well. They're not as provably decentralized and on-chain, but they're something, and they're clean and they work kind of frictionlessly, not totally frictionlessly, but fairly frictionlessly. And so those are sort of a few different approaches, and Serum BTC is sort of a roadmap for how you might do the first one. Serum USD has some of those properties, but the core thing it's trying to solve is you can't have a dollar on the blockchain. Like a physical dollar is not a thing that's blockchain compatible, neither is a bank account. And so right now we have our stable coins, which are interfaces between those. And that's not perfect. And one thing you could do is just decide that you trust one of the existing ones. You can decide that USDC or Pax or DAI or whatever is sort of good enough. And if you think that, then that's great. Or Tether, obviously, which is sort of like the most frequently chosen one. If you don't like any of those individually, though, one cool thing that you can do. So one thing people have tried doing is basically having a basket of them. And that definitely reduces exposure to any one of them, but it still means that if anyone goes under, then you'll sort of lose whatever 1/7 of your basket. So it makes your exposure broader but lesser. Another thing you can do though, which I think is kind of cool and maybe better, is to take the median of a bunch of them. And so instead of expiring to the average of a group of stablecoins, you expire to the median one of them. And the cool thing about that is then even if a third of the stablecoins all go to 0 and the others stay at 1, it's still worth $1. And so that makes it way more robust to one or a few of them going under. And you do that basically by having the sort of settlement procedure for it, where each side vetoes one less than half of the options, and then you settle on sort of the one in the middle.
All right, that makes sense. I mean, the stablecoin part is always fascinating to me for some reason. All right, another question from the audience. This is from YouTube. This is from Frai. Would Serum DEX be better than FTX? What is the advantage of using Serum DEX over FTX? Which a lot of different people have asked in various ways, but this is just the one I picked for now.
Yeah, I think what I'd say is it depends on what you want. And I'm sort of not going to definitively say one is better than the other. And instead, what I'd say is like, look, if you're looking for a fully decentralized experience, if that's really important to you, then Serum, because it's going to be on chain. And if what you're looking for instead is sort of some of the really unique bespoke products, which are a lot easier to do from a centralized perspective, or fiat on ramps or something, then maybe the answer is FTX. And so really what I want to say is like, I don't know, like you should use the one that you want to use and that fits what you're looking for.
So do you think there'll be any impact on FTX with the birth of Serum, or are the two able to coexist in your opinion?
I think they can coexist, and I think there's going to be some flow between them. And I also think there are ways for them to help each other. I think that there are a lot of ways for, just like a lot of ways for them to help each other. I think like, FTX obviously says fiat on ramps, has a ton of products. It has, a really easy to use interface. It's super fast. And I think that there are a lot of supporting roles that it can play for Serum. And on the other hand, I think that, Serum is going to be like an fully on-chain DEX. And I think that for people who want to do some of their trading through that, that's pretty powerful. And so, I think really what I'd say is like, they sort of fill moderately different niches, and I just want people to use the one that they want to use, and for them to help each other out where they can.
All right. Here we have another question about a different ecosystem. This is from YouTube, Ethereum HKHK. What is the possibility roadmap for linking the vast Ethereum DeFi ecosystem and assets with Serum and Solana?
Yeah, and again, I think there are two things here. The first is trying to get enough of an ecosystem with Serum that a lot of people just start building on it natively and adding to it natively. And the second is using things like optimistic rollups to get communication between the two networks, so that you can actually just directly interface between an Ethereum-based application and a Solana-based one.
I'm trying to like ask the questions so they flow, but they're coming in really quickly here.
Totally understand.
Here's another one from Mietria. This is part of the first 10, but this person has already asked once, but it's a good question. So security is one of the threats to DeFi's continuous growth. As one of the first DeFi products to continuously deliver innovation, how have you overcome this? Do you have a bug bounty program to check vulnerability of your smart contracts?
Yeah, so we have a lot of people looking over this code, and I mean, we've had bug bounties and stuff, and you get something from them. Like there's real use from them, although a lot of it is trolls. That's sort of like the problem with having a bug bounty program fundamentally is you get a ton of fake bug reports, trying to make it easier for you to give them money than to deal with their trolling. So on top of that, we just have a ton of devs looking over each part of this, from people on the Solana side to the FTX side, to various of the projects working on Solana, and sort of having as many eyes go over these things and as many people stress testing it even before deployment as possible.
Here's one from Michael C. from YouTube, who asks, will Serum list assets such as stocks and gold, etc.?
It's a really good question, and I can't promise for sure what's going to happen here. I think that a lot of this is going to be up to what the community wants to do and wants, but I certainly think that's like that's a thing that I wouldn't be shocked to see rolling out on the Serum ecosystem at some point.
Here's another one that came from earlier. It's Orderbooks. Why Solana? What is the reason for going forward with Orderbook instead of AMM?
So if you compare like a centralized exchange to an AMM-based one in any liquid product, you'll see a pretty stark difference. And it's sort of not close. And I think that like Orderbooks versus AMMs are just a big part of that. You can provide shitty liquidity with an AMM. It's basically impossible to provide really sturdy liquidity. And it's sort of hilariously bad for when you talk about like an actual liquidity provider trying to use it, like the fact that you can't place a bid or an offer, you have to place both simultaneously. The fact that you have to abide by a very well-defined constant curve over space. The fact that it's super capital inefficient for that reason. And there's sort of all these things that just make it like not close. And because you can just look at slippage on like a centralized exchange versus a DEX, and you can see the difference. I mean, it's orders of magnitude different.
This is another one from another CMC chat user, 3818550. As we know, every successful project has a few stories behind the scenes. What's the story behind FTX Exchange's success? Well, what was that vision when it first emerged as an idea? And are there any special upcoming FTX Exchange updates that you want to show or share with us today?
Yeah, so I think that like before that, is sort of trading with Alameda, and we're having a lot of frustrating experiences with the current derivatives exchanges, and sort of feeling like, oh boy, it's not going anywhere. Like these places, they're filling a really central role in the crypto ecosystem, but really not doing that good of a job of it, and not improving. And also that we had like a really good understanding of the product and how it worked, and that sort of eventually just like, fuck it, we can do this. Like we can build a better product than this. And so then we did. And that was sort of really the genesis of FTX. And in terms of what's going to be coming, I mean, I think the biggest thing are going to be a lot of integrations with Serum in a lot of ways to help build up Serum and share, with the success of Serum. And I think you should expect to see a bunch of those rolling out over the next couple of weeks, and sort of combined with that, just generally, a lot more integrations with DeFi.
So here's another question that kind of goes along that partnership line. Hi, Sam. When will the DEX be launched? How fast will it be? How much is Binance involved in your project, and any future partnerships? So that's 4 questions.
All right. So, when will it be launched? I can't give you an exact time, but soon. And in the next couple of weeks, I think is what we're saying. And sort of hope it's going to be on the short end of that. And I think like even sometime this week we're going to have more pieces of this to unveil, which is going to be pretty exciting. So yeah, I think like pretty soon we're going to have exciting stuff rolling out, and got a lot of partnerships coming up as well. And I think can't sort of necessarily break all of those right now, but some of those I'm just like super excited about, and I think will really help supercharge it. And obviously Binance has been in the loop. They listed Serum on day one, which is awesome, and been talking to the folks there. I think they haven't been super involved in like the development work of it. I think they have sort of their own products that they're working on from that standpoint. But always excited to work with them where it makes sense.
All right, us too at CMC. Here's a question from YouTube. You might have touched on this before, but this is from Anupam Sahab, who asks, does Solana use sharding?
So Salon does not use sharding right now, and instead it gets its speed all on sort of one one chain, one shard, and it does that just with a ton of optimizations. And it does that by basically trying to think about what are the real limits here. How can we get this as fast as is technologically possible? And I think that's super exciting. I think that makes sort of the core of a really, really powerful blockchain. And I think as much as you can get on one shard as possible, the better, because it's super annoying to communicate between shards. And then you can also, if and when it becomes necessary, look into sharding later, but sharding on top of what's already sort of the fastest single shard thing that you can have. So
I have another really kind of general question from earlier on from YouTube that I was debating asking, but I'll go for it. It's from Wade Lyle, and he asks, should we ban people from using bank accounts since banks sometimes fail?
Right. I mean, no is sort of obviously the answer. And I mean, I don't know exactly where it's going. Like there are sort of a number of directions with this thing. But I think what it says, first of all, obviously no, the world would fall apart if you did that. And even to the extent that sort of non-banking financial rails are being built for now, they're sort of reliant on banks in one place or another if you drill down enough. Maybe that'll change eventually, but we're certainly not there yet. And sort of more generally, like, I think something having a failure rate that isn't zero is certainly not conditions to ban, except everything has a failure rate that's not zero. And it's all about minimizing that and making it sort of as forgiving as possible when it does happen. I think when you think about crypto, and particularly you think about parts of crypto that are sort of bank-like, I think that an important thing is getting that failure rate down to something that's tolerable and that people will trust in the way that many people trust banks right now.
Here's another one from Michael C. that's a little bit more focused. When will on-chain governance start on Serum? Is there a timeline for rolling it out?
Yeah, I would say next month or so. And I think that there's parts of this are hard to take back, and so you definitely want to make sure there's no fuck up in it. But I would say that over the next month or so, you're going to see it start rolling out.
I mean, there's a lot of questions just from a few people, but they're really good questions, so I'll keep asking them. This is again from Ethereum HKHK, who asks from YouTube, Do you think there is a use case or value to having centralized institutions provide gateways to Serum and other decentralized DeFi products, or having DeFi layers into centralized companies or services?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, there are some things that centralized projects are really good at right now. And I'm just super excited for those to, those to build out on Serum and integrate with it. And I think that there's, even if the core of Serum is totally on chain, I'm excited for as many things as possible to interface with it.
Let's maybe go a little bit back general from an earlier question, which is, how would your experience in running FTX help you run Serum now? If you're, running is maybe the wrong word.
Right. I think that I've just had, and in general, a lot of people I'm working with have had a lot of experience doing a really diverse set of things. I mean, part of that is just building an exchange and an order book and things like that, which are obviously going to be super important. But it's also just more generally everything from operational things to business development and marketing to customer service. There's just a ton of pretty diverse things that are important for running basically any large business in crypto, and which I think are going to translate over to this.
Well, here's another super specific question from YouTube, and this is from Frai again. Will the SRM token be staked on Binance? And what about the rate of staking rewards? It's now 4% if the community vote to increase it to 15%. Would it be approved?
So, first answer is I do think you're going to see more exchanges rolling out staking for it over the next few weeks. And I'm super excited for that. And then another question, as for a staking rate, this is just sort of like a temporary rate while on-chain governance comes online. But once it does, I mean, there's sort of, there's going to be votes of the Serum holders through the nodes about what staking should be and how it should work. And I'm excited to see how those play out. But it's going to start to take into account more and more things as the nodes come online and start to fill more and more functions in the community.
Here's a topical one, which wouldn't be asked at any other time, but about COVID. This is from user 2836893. COVID is currently putting the crypto market in a serious economic crisis, which I think is maybe debatable. But then they go on to say, so what are your strategies for maintaining FTX token price stability?
Yeah, so I think I'd say COVID's actually not affected us all that much. And it's obviously a completely wild March, and that had pretty big impact for a while, but things have mostly evened out since then. And as a fully online industry, it helps a lot that we don't have to rely on physical things, which are all getting canceled because of COVID. And we've also been, fortunate enough to be able to be working the whole time and staying even in offices the whole time, which has been really great and helpful for productivity. And so, overall, I think it's just we've been able to charge through it reasonably well. And, I'm excited. FTX has had a ton of growth recently, and I think FTT has grown, because of that.
Now I'm slipping back to Serum. It's like back and forth.
Yep.
This is from no one again on YouTube. How decentralized is Serum now, and how decentralized is it planned to be? What will be the process by which open source public contributors can get their code implemented?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So as for how how decentralized it is right now, the Serum DEX is going to be fully 100% on chain. And so it's not going to be like a centralized matching engine combining on-chain funds or something. It's all on chain. And there's a page. If you go to projectserum.com and click on the developer resources tab, you can see the repos that people are working on a lot of these projects in. And we would love to have other contributors to these as well, whether they're just sort of like independent people submitting suggestions, or whether it's dedicated groups working on projects on Serum. I think either way would be super exciting. And the things that aren't fully decentralized right now, like governance and things like that, over the next month or two, you're going to start to see those going on chain as well.
I have two questions now, and they're both about interfaces. So the first one's about Serum. This is from Willier on YouTube, and he or she says, the ability for Serum DEX to reach mass adoption relies heavily on GUIs, which I had to look it up, the graphic user
Yep.
interface being polished and friendly. How much of your team is dedicated to designing a top quality user experience? But I'll ask the second one because they're connected. This is from Sempro Crypto on our chat, who says, when will FTX change its smooth and fast user interface? When is the FTX mobile app available? So Serum Dex interface, FTX interface, and mobile app.
Yeah, so on the Serum side, and currently what's happening right now today, soaking up GUIs to Serum. Like the on-chain code is basically there. And it's a matter of integrating that with GUIs. And we're also excited for other people to build GUIs for, and anyone can do it. It is fully on-chain, so it's not, that part's not at all centralized. And anyone who has, thinks that they're great at building them, like absolutely go for it. We're excited to see that. And hosting them as well. We'd love to have multiple people hosting, hosting interfaces for it. In terms of FTX, the new FTX mobile app is live. If you go to ftx.com/apps, you can get links to download the iPhone and Android versions of those. And it's totally redesigned. It's a lot faster and slicker than the old one. And so, yeah, hopefully you'll check that out.
All right, we have time for one or two more questions. Let me see. Just checking out our chat and our YouTube. You kind of answered about partnerships, but here's one from user 2836893. What is the business model of FTX and how does it generate revenue for development?
Yeah, so FTX, I mean, it's basically all fee-based revenue. So it's, on every trade there's a fee, and that's sort of what it makes its revenue on. There are some other things as well, but that's really the core of it. And yeah, that's sort of the revenue that goes into building out the team and the platform and the technology.
All right, I'll do one more with Serum and then one more to end, just to make it even. Can you introduce SRM and MSRM if you haven't already, and talk about what the duties of nodes are and what SRM holders can actually vote on?
Yeah, absolutely. So SRM, which is the Serum token, is the backbone of the Serum of the Serum ecosystem. And what's that mean? So 100% of the fees on Serum flow back to SRM in one way or another. And the sort of what that way is depends on what SRM holders vote on, but through buy and burns or, and staking and other means. So it sort of has access to that. There's also, as I said, on-chain governance for sort of core core economic features of Serum that SRM holders will get to vote on. And then the last part of that is nodes, which are basically collections of Serum holders staking together to kind of coordinate governance and perform some on-chain duties like progressing forward cross-chain protocols and things like that, and have sort of rewards, staking rewards, which are based on performance in those. Mega Serum, which is MSRM, is 1 million Serum put together, and basically, what's that mean? You get all the benefits you'd have of having 1 million Serum and then some. On the flip side, why wouldn't everyone turn their Serum into Mega Serum? Is because they're scarce. So there's a limit to 1,000 Mega Serum, which means that at most 1,000 times 1 million, so at most 10% of all the Serum in the world can be in the form of Mega Serum at any point in time.
All right, it sounds intriguing. Creating FOMO for non-Mega Serum holders. All right, this will be the last question. This is from MJP Boy from YouTube. It is Sam. Would you rather fight 1 horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Oh boy, I'm gonna go with so I kind of feel like if I did 100 duck-sized horses, I could probably outrun them, and that seems pretty powerful if nothing else. So I'm gonna go with that one. I feel like I just like keep running till I got an actual weapon. So I feel like with the one big one, I feel like I might just lose before I got there.
I was going to ask and why, but you have a logic to your answer already.
Yep.
All right, that's it. Maybe you can just tell everyone where they can find you on Twitter or wherever else you're online.
Absolutely. So I'm, I spend way too much of my time on Twitter. I'm SBF_Alameda there. And outside of that, you can find us on, you can find us on, other Twitter accounts, Telegram, Discord, WeChat, and other platforms. And you can find FTX at ftx.com. And you can find the Serum homepage at projectserum.com.
And I will say thank you to everyone. You can find us at coinmarketcap.com. And the first 10 questions that I picked will reach out to you to DM us for figuring out that giveaway stuff. So I just want to say thanks again to Sam and also for everyone that contributed any questions. Reach out to us again if you're one of those 10 question people. We'll make sure that you're actually one of them in our Twitter DMs. And come back into CMC chat. We do AMAs every few weeks. We do chats every Thursday, and maybe Sam will see you again for another live event.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, signing off now. Bye, guys.